All right. I'm going to do some stuff quick before I get going, before I start talking. I'm going to start with just some clips, I think. Am I going? Yeah, I'm going. And I'm going to post this on X because why not? Just a second. Live now. So I don't know if this is exactly what I was thinking about talking about recently, but I think it's related. So there's a few things I want to play. So JD Lyonhart and Jordan Daniel Wood had a conversation with Nate recently called on Grail Country called Being and Becoming, essentially just on being and becoming. And I posted on X that it was, I don't know, maybe, I think it's probably true. I don't know. I'm trying to remember back. I remember there's at least one or two other conversations that I have felt similarly about, but this one is good. Like it's about the Trinity. It's about a person. It's about proper knowledge. It's really about personalist knowing and knowing as you are known. All the things that I talk about, but very technically and very philosophically and very theologically. And they talk about the dangers of abstraction, how you can't really root knowledge in abstraction, all that stuff. I'm going to play a clip though, but like towards the very end, I left many comments. I think I left about 10 comments. It's in the description below. I need to rewatch it. I'll probably rewatch it today because it's that good and that dense. But toward the very end, they had a really great section on freedom. They talked a lot about freedom in like the last quarter, something like that. But the very end, JD asks Jordan a question, and his response is really great. So I'm going to play that. I'm going to talk a little bit about, yeah, exactly. What are we allowed to talk about in the wake of such tragedy, McMo? What up, buddy? I'm going to talk about a X post from Nick about Jordan Daniel Wood because Jordan Woods, which is also linked, Jordan and JD on JD Lyonhart's channel had a conversation about being theologians and being academics in the world right now, and they talked about politics. And in that stream, at 1821, because I just looked it up, JD finds out that Kirk actually died, and so they talk about. It's a lot of it is the state of the world in politics, so I want to bring that in. But a lot of this stream is about I want to have it be on what is freedom. And I think Jordan says really well, articulates very well what freedom is, rooting it all the way back into the church fathers' true freedom. Within this, they're talking a lot of it is Christologic and in and out. And as my friend Cal says, to know a limit as the limit is to already be beyond the limit. I mean, it's very abstract. It's very philosophical. It's very good. but what is the nature of free speech? And probably this is what I would say. Free in a Christian perspective, maybe Jewish, I don't know, definitely in a Christian perspective, free entails good. Speech isn't free that isn't good, and that isn't true, and that isn't beautiful. Inasmuch as you are misaligned from God, your speech is not free. And they talk about libertarian freedom and all that stuff, but I'm going to play the clip. I'm going to play the clip, the JD clip, because he says it very well. I don't think I can't say it technically better than he. I mean, I say it the same way that I say it all the time. So it's good to hear things from other perspectives. And then I want to play a clip from a Joachim Phoenix interview. What's it from? It's from an interview with some, I forget the guy's name, but anyhow, you'll see that he did right after, or promoting the Joker movie. It's not the Joker movie. And the question is like, does violent art make people more violent? And I think it goes, I'm going to try to weave, it connects to the point that Jordan and JD are talking about in this other clip. The difference between art and talking about art, which I would argue necessarily moves you from the realm of the phenomenological to the abstract, which is part of what's going on here. And I think violence lives in the abstract. You could also, well, not necessarily. Ideological violence lives in the abstract. Let's say it that way. And that has to do with left and right brain stuff. Ian McGilchrist, anger is in your left brain. So I'm going to play those two clips, and I have Nick's X post connected up, but it's also in the link. You can look at that. But I want to try to talk about how these things work. So that we can maybe have wisdom, in as far as I can see it. And maybe the answer to this, and I think we'll probably get there eventually, but I think, and God bless him, Jess, I've been talking to Jess a little bit about this, and he just keeps, in the comments of these videos, he's just posting sections from the book of Job, which is excellent. Okay, let's start with this clip first. I think I have it queued up. I don't think we're too fast. Okay, here we go. Ready? Are we working? Here we go.
Well, to make this more specific, would what you just said mean that even the critiques that people make of voluntarism are too limited?
In one aspect, yeah. So like
critiques of anything. This gets to the talking about things versus the mere phenomenology of the event, which they talk about earlier. But like, there's criticism. They're talking about criticism per se, which applies to anything. It applies to Nick criticizing Jordan Wood. And so they're talking about voluntarism in regards to freedom, libertarian freedom, voluntarism. And he was criticizing it before, and now JD asked, do your critiques of that, are there things that apply? And Jordan is saying, in a sense. Okay, I'll back it up again.
What are too limited?
In one aspect, yeah. So like one way I would maybe characterize what I'm after, and I think that you can find in the Philokalia, that tradition, and Maximian tradition, is you can find an intellectualist view of freedom, or rationalist view of freedom, or rational freedom, like say the way David does it in That All Shall Be Saved or whatever. You can find that. They do hold that. But they also hold something else, which is the primordial sort of possibility of error. And error is still presented to you as a determinate thing. It doesn't change the act of freedom, even if it's a sin. So it still respects the idea that there is no free act that's sort of just indeterminate, which was the original sort of condition of the abstract within and without. Indeterminate, within and without what? Is there an object within? Is there an object without? What are we talking about? And so I think that
okay, I'm muted. Even that, within and without what? And again, they're talking about Hegel. They're talking about, or yeah. Well, this is also Hegel. To know the limit as the limit is to already be beyond the limit. It's the imaginal. So what Vervaeke talks about. But anyhow, okay, keep going.
So it still does that, and yet it does still kind of make room for this spiritual life of oscillation, and now I got to do prudence, and I've got to do discernment within my soul, and all the really personal stuff that unfolds. And so they haven't really given up on a view of on one level, they haven't given up the idea that there is no such thing as freedom that's not ultimately rational, but they simultaneously admit that nothing right now it corresponds simply to the ultimately rational.
This is the free.
So where we're at right now is not actually freedom. What we experience is something like a diminished or muted freedom, which is
am I muting myself? Because you are not free until you are good. So unless you are fully good, you're not free. Always remember that in your speech. I mean, truly, then this has nothing to do with people like saying we should legislate free speech in some way. Like very American. I'm probably really close to a free speech absolutist, but there are caveats within this, within our legal frameworks, and so, but you have diminished freedom in as much as you are not knowing as you are known, properly oriented to the good, aligned to God. And towards the end of this, I'm sorry, I'm going to not try to keep interrupting. Go back and watch it. But like, he said something toward the end, because I emailed Jordan and he has not replied to me because either he's a busy man or he doesn't want to reply to me. Wanting to talk about Nomus and Maximus. And see, I started talking about Maximus and I combined Maximus and Gnomic and said Nomus. I'm thinking ahead of my head. Because a lot of this is about Chalcedon. And I've said before that any meaningful intellectual, the caveat of intellectual, conversation is about the nature of the God-man relation, which is about Chalcedon. It's about Christology. It's about what are we talking about? Freedom, the will, all of that. And this is what this conversation is. That's why I said it's probably the highest level intellectual conversation I've ever heard. Okay, we're going to go back to the thing. They'll get into talking about a question that I wanted to have with Jordan, so I probably don't even need to have the conversation with him. I just need to watch this again and think more. Keep ruminating. Okay. So we're talking, okay, do we lose the place?
Say something, but we ultimately rational. And so where we're at right now is not actually freedom. What we experience is something like a diminished or muted freedom, which is to say something less than true freedom. And so that's the more interesting thing that corresponds to our phenomenological experience of freedom now. But then also that freedom is the very basis upon which we've created these abstract conditions within and without. So I don't think any abstraction based on that kind of current experience is necessarily sufficient for a full accounting of freedom. And that's why I said earlier perfection. Like I want to go to that's why I want the eschatological. And I don't think of the eschatological as just something that's on the horizon, not yet here, because in Christ, the end of the ages have come upon us, which means that whatever is eschatologically real is at least somehow partially revealed or glimpsed in the middle in Christ. And so the fact that he has a natural will, not a gnomic will, shows me something about freedom and its determinacy that abstract considerations won't, for example.
Well, I know we're running out of time.
Okay, that's it. So he has a natural will, he has a divine will, and not a gnomic deliberative will. He's not deliberating. He's not abstracting. He's just integrally being present in wisdom in a way that we can't, not yet. And maybe, Jess, maybe that's the difference with Job and Christ. Although, like, this is a part that I don't know, and I left this comment on there, I think, about this. Okay, what was it? Yes, this. And yet, he was perfected by what he suffered and grew in knowledge and wisdom. Amazing. So even if Christ did not have a gnomic deliberative will, he was still perfected by what he suffered. And they talk about being and becoming and how you can't, earlier in the conversation, how you can't divorce the two. Perhaps even in the divine. Hey, T. Grog, also, if you're going to be here just to troll, I guess that's your choice. But like, are you just here to cast stones, or are you trying to understand? You have to, this is the thing, to know the limit as the limit is to already be beyond the limit. And if you want to just stay at that Kantian glass ceiling within your own frameworks and mind without trying to imagine something other, like, unless you want to know what you don't want to know, as Sherry said, or what's my Lukeism? I can't remember. It's essentially that. I have some saying about that. I mean, you have to try. Oh, I got to change this too, because I'm not, listen, we got to go with my little Captain of Woo thing. Okay. All right. You have to want to be able to, in order to grow in any regard, in wisdom and knowledge, or to be on the spiral, for progress to happen, even within yourself, you have to be open You have to be open to the truth. This is my thing, to the truth outside the truth that you currently apprehend. That's the imagination. And you actually can't think without it. That's when you're actually being solipsistic, is when you're not open to the truth outside the truth you currently apprehend. When you don't have an iconic relationship with what you think you know. Okay, that is the whatever. That is the Jordan Wood thing. And because I don't want to be here forever. Yeah, exactly. Think different. That's cute. I like it. All right, let's go to the Joaquin Phoenix thing because it's very related, I think. Here we go. Boom. Let's do it.
Right now, there's the whole question of, is this movie too violent? Is it violent? Can it make other people violent? What's your reaction when this controversy stirs up?
Well, it's tough because according to my research, talking about it is irresponsible. News coverage. So look, here's where I'm stuck because I have a lot to say, and there's a lot of research that I did about this. But according to my research, there was a kind of vast increase in these particular type of crimes after 1963, and that year is when they started like an unprecedented amount of news coverage about these crimes. And so people that commit these crimes, this personality type, they seek personal notoriety, they seek personal recognition. That is what they thrive on. So I've been there's a conversation that I'll have with you off camera, and I'll walk you through this whole thing, and I think you'll understand why I've not wanted to talk about it. Because I don't think that that's helpful, and I understand that the media feels like they're being the responsible ones, but I don't think that that's true, and I think the evidence is to the contrary. So that's why I've remained quiet about the subject, and now you force me to talk about it. But I do have a lot to say, and
there's
as soon
an
as we're done,
aspect
I
of
will
it, and
tell
then
you.
I'll be done with what this is.
Please.
But I'm just saying, I think you're right. I think when you publicize it, you're giving those people that do have whatever is wrong with them, here, any place else in the world, something to aim for, because otherwise you would be talking about what's actually happening in the movie rather than how the movie's being projected, which you, I think, as an actor, wouldn't have responsibility for. You're playing the character, right? You're not projecting it as something.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think movies influence people in that way. I don't think they cause homicidal ideation. It's called, the creation of homicidal thoughts. So I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's movies, but the conversation around them, I think, can be dangerous.
Yeah, and what we see is people wanting to make that the subject of what the movie is rather than what it really is. So that is another subject. But let's just
Okay, so I was going to interrupt it and say something, but we'll let it finish. So I think in the same way, here we go. Does a movie like Joker make people violent? Does violent art make people violent? No. Talking about it does. I think that's true. And I can't explain it really. This is that George MacDonald quote. I'm sorry I can't explain the thing to you. I but barely apprehend it myself, but I intuit that it's right, and I think that's true. Do politics make you violent? No, but talking about politics does. But is talking about politics intrinsic to the political thing, the way that it's set up, the bureaucracies? I don't know. And part of that really is, I think this is so true, to go back to the Jordan JD thing. It's because of abstraction. And abstraction is to put greater emphasis on abstraction than on your lived reality is to live in an anti-incarnational world. That's probably the most succinct way that I can say it. Because I believe the incarnation is real, and because of the radical implications of the incarnation, where you live is embodied. The fullness of your being is embodiment. And there's something, not to go into the whole resurrection thing, but there's something about resurrection there too. And so, like, your abstraction, he was saying, this is the difference between any form of rationalism, probably, and phenomenology. This is why Jordan talks about in there. This is why phenomenology happened, because what the real is now and now and now and now and now, not the second when you abstract from it and start to think about it. That isn't real. That is either, and this is why, like, anxiety is living in the past, or no, anxiety is living in the future, and despair and regret and shame is living in the past. And neither of those things are real. Like, you thinking about them is just potential. It's just potential for future embodiment. What is real is like what manifests to you. Barfield talks about this in Saving the Appearances. And it's really hard to wrap your head around. And I don't even know. And here's the thing. And there is no benefit in even wrapping your head around it unless it enables you to live better. Because Rilke said the point is to live everything. And I think that's true. I think that's just the implications of the incarnation. Be holy as I am holy. You are not free until you are holy. All right. So I am going to show Nick's tweet, and then I'm going to open it up and look in comments because I think this relates to TLC. It relates to what I'm doing here. I watched a couple videos recently. That friends sent me one, and what were they? Where do I find what they were? It doesn't really matter. Anyhow, they were a couple videos on why, and I don't watch the news. When Minneapolis was on fire after the events of George Floyd, I didn't even know it. I was out of town. I was driving back in town. I saw the 2nd precinct on fire. I didn't even know it was happening because I don't follow the news. I'm not online, even though I live stream and I talk to you all and I have offline conversations with you, and I listen to a lot of YouTube as I'm doing other things, primarily TLC stuff. I'm not online. I don't follow the news because of all this stuff that we were just talking about, because most of it is abstraction. Most of it is projection, even like what the guy who was interviewing him, like the art itself is one thing. And when you watch the art, you have, and it's true art, if it's true art, you have an iconic phenomenological experience watching the art. And in that, like in a Heideggerian Terrence Malick sense, if it's good art, it can change your apprehension of reality and move you to better environment. It can give you wisdom in a way that is poetic, perhaps noetic, and transforms the way that you see reality. Propaganda doesn't do that. Propaganda is mind control. Propaganda tries to tell you what to think, and most news is mass formation and propaganda. Don't pay attention to the news. I don't think you should. I know there are those that will say that that's bad and some form of privilege, and then you're not educated. I think it's the opposite, and whatever. I guess we can either agree to disagree or not, because you can either do slave tyrant or agree to disagree and work it out somehow. I think despite all our thinky talky, what the TLC is about is learning. It's what I call iconic knowing. We are learning to talk about ideas and abstractions in a way that prioritizes, Vervaeke would say, the adverbial over the adjectival. So, like, I'm not primarily focused on what you think about X topic and what you say about X topic. I am primarily focused on how we engage with one another in dialogos and conversational love. Is PVK have a homeroom right now? Did he release one? I don't know. I didn't see a PVK video, sorry. And so how to disagree. Okay, just a sec. Sometimes my children drive me crazy. This is why, like, in a family, in a healthy body, of which I consider a family to be a healthy body, or with your own body, you can lose some battles, but you want to win the war. That is wisdom. If you get focused, I think that's part of what the adjectival adverbial is. If you get hyper focused on one little thing in abstract, because anytime you're thinking about any little thing like that, outside of the mere phenomena, outside of the event, of the occurrence of whatever, and any label, this is part of why labels work this way. You want to label somebody a Christian, you want to label them a Democrat, you want to label them a Republican, you want to label them a fascist, you want to label them a communist, you want to do whatever. Guess what? All that's abstract. All of it. And that doesn't mean we don't have meaningful disagreements. But again, an actual disagreement is divorce, is death. An actual disagreement, a house divided cannot stand. That's what that means. Actual disagreement means you cannot have a united house. And so when you have a perceived disagreement adjectivally, if you engage that person adverbally in love and hospitality, and do not insist on your own way, and do not count yourself more highly than you ought, but in love, you mutually submit to one another out of reverence for Christ, or arguments for the sake of heaven, you don't really disagree. At least on that more fundamental level, that like this conversation is good and we should continue having it. Now there's a whole medium thing I could get into, because I was talking with Nick, retweeted some comment I said about false equivalency, about the written word and mediums of the written word. But I do think that the written word is the medium that allowed for this abstract, primarily abstract thinking and adjectival dividing from people based in abstraction. I think that came out of the written word. Now, here's the thing. Based in, like, Charles Williams said this beautifully in his The Descent of the Dove. But here's the thing. Are distinctions and divisions ultimately a bad? Well, not if the point of everything is the deeper thing, which is reconciliation. So even though divisions came, I would argue because of the written word, because of the medium of the written word, and there's also many, many good things about it. Okay, like, I don't want to go into that whole topic of like there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs in every medium. And the medium is the message. And in every medium, you can have Christ-like apprehension of truth, which is where the medium and the message are one. When you have divine revelation, the medium and the message are one. I think that's what divine revelation is. When you know properly, and when you have proper knowledge, then you are truly free and you live properly. All right. So I'm going to share this post because, like, Nick, trying to do the wrong thing. Nick was upset with Jordan, and that's fine. Listen, right, you can be upset. And this is what who said this? He said, since no one is going to say it, I'll go ahead and say it. The podcast where JD Lyonhart and Jordan would find out live about Charlie Kirk's dying is a disaster. Okay, and I don't want to get into a ton of detail about that, but just to say he didn't like the way that they handled that moment. And I would say I think JD handled it better because he was visibly troubled, which I appreciate, because I'm like, someone just died, and someone that public and that had that much connection died. Like, I don't know. And part of that, listen, maybe it's a resonance thing, because it very much disturbed me. Like, when I found out I heard during that day, something happened to Charlie Kirk, and I don't follow Charlie Kirk. And I had heard that, and I was like, I don't want to know. Because of this, I don't want to follow the news. I don't want to get caught up in that. I like, in as much as it's possible, and I realize I'm not impervious to this, I don't like mind control. I like my thoughts. I don't want to bring in a bunch of other people's thoughts thinking they're my thoughts. I don't like that. And so I didn't know, but then I found out somehow through the course of the day, like I found out, oh, he died. And then I was like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on. And I can't even, like, with a lot of things, I can't even think about it that much because I'm a very emotional person. And here's the thing, we also have to not have the kind of part of wisdom is not absolutizing your own preferences and temperaments to absolutes and saying everybody has to act like me. That's part of Christian love, ironically. And so when I found all that out, I got emotional. When I watch Charlie's wife talk about things, I get emotional. Like, I'm troubled by it. I empathize with it. Part of that is my own egoic stuff because I'm resonating and relating and applying it to my life and feeling empathy. And like, it all makes me very sad. Like, it makes me sad that all this happened. But then, like, for me to then exercise that love for people who don't act like me is a kind of kenosis. It's a kind of self-emptying. You don't have to look exactly like me for me to love you. If you only love those who act like you and do the things that you want, even the pagans do that. It's Christian love when you love your enemies. Up to and including your enemies. That is Christian love. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. It's just, this is why Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth. Because in people thinking they're serving Christ, they hate their brother. It's the narcissism of minor differences that Freud talked about. And like, it's just, if you disagree with somebody who self-identifies as a Christian to the point of like borderline slander, what about charity? Like, how are you going to extend grace to your enemies? I don't know. Okay, I feel like I was going to talk about something else, but I was going to open it up. How we talk about these things matters. Making space for people that you disagree matters. Here's a question I don't have. Where's the line? I'm going to pin the thing. Where is the line? Because I'm going to, by 9:30 for sure, I'm shutting this down. Sorry, I'm trying to pin this. Where is the line where you actually excommunicate? Like, where is that legit? Okay, McMo, what up, buddy?
Good morning. How are you?
My friend. I think I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm not giving in to, I'm not enslaved by certain selfish neuroticisms that make me collapse in on myself this morning, I think.
Praise the Lord. Um, yeah, I came on mostly just to say that PVK and Nate are wrong. I think that this will be much more significant than they seem to think it is in this moment. If not, I mean, historical, like, who knows? But no, this is a very significant moment, and the significance of it didn't hit me right away, nor was I kind of immediately saddened, like it seems like some people are, even angered. Like, I didn't really have much of an emotional response to it. Part of that was because I was on a work trip. Now, the next morning, so this would have been Thursday morning, I got a call from HR and my role got reorganized out. So now I'm unemployed. And so I've basically been viewing this whole thing through the lens of like upside down world where like I have a new house, a new car, no job, et cetera, et cetera. And so yeah, I feel like I have been pretty tapped in to at least the corners of the corner that I am tapped in. And yes, I think that this is very significant. And it's significant because Charlie Kirk is considered a kind of normie conservative in some real sense. And so if the normie conservative is being made into the likes of Martin Luther King or JFK, then what could be said about someone who has more conservative views than Charlie, or more religious views than Charlie, less kind of secular liberal views.
Yeah, but
So
but the problem I have is that I'm being told to think those things. And by the way, I have
yeah,
said,
well,
if you
I
if
agree
you
with.
you can look at my Twitter, I've said nothing the entire time about the entire. I've said nothing at all.
Well,
The only thing that bothers me is that there is an obvious attempt to make me think a particular way about this event, and that's a
yeah,
fucking problem.
but that always
That's a
happens, right?
fucking problem.
Doesn't that always
What?
happen? Doesn't that always happen?
Yeah,
Not to this. Not to this level. Not to this level.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm with you insofar as there seems to be uh the demons of Mammon and Leviathan are chomping at the bits to use this towards their ends, and I'm certainly not 100% trusting of the narrative that was given to us by FBI head of the FBI that doesn't seem to know what he's doing, and just on the looks alone seems constantly nervous and afraid. So that's not what I want the head of the FBI to look like. So yeah, it's not. I agree with you in the sense that there does seem to be kind of a move towards, for some people, coming to like very strict conclusions about what this all means and what we're
Yeah.
to make of it.
When we can't possibly know that. That's the thing. It's like everyone's rushing to decide that this is some kind of like watershed event that has this massive historical meaning that we'll never forget. That's this huge thing, and everyone's being told to make a big deal out of it when we actually have no idea what the lasting impact of it is.
See, and that
whatsoever.
so part of that is related to my whole stream, which is like people wanting to tell everyone else what to think so that they can control narratives and exert their will on the world, which is not freedom.
I have a question.
In line with
In a
go ahead.
in a meta modern moment, what should we think that the historical impact of this is, Nate?
I think we should call it what it is, which is a tragedy, but that we shouldn't like. But the problem is that I see people trying to use this as to drive agendas.
They will do that. For sure.
And everyone is being told precisely what they should think. Like, okay, so here's why the reason I commented at all is because of the idea that somehow that there was something inappropriate in the way that JD and Jordan reacted to it in their conversation, which I watched, and there was nothing at all. Like, they were going to have the conversation they had anyway. They acknowledged that it happened. I thought they were both respectful about it, and they carried on with the conversation that they were going to have anyway. The fact that Charlie Kirk died had no impact on that conversation. They were going to have the same conversation anyway, regardless.
I think that's what bothers Nick.
Because they were insufficiently sorrowful about it, or like what?
Yes.
Yeah, fuck off. Like, you don't get to tell other people how they're supposed to react to things.
No,
right.
That's not the way. That's not the way. That's not the way.
Well, and that's kind of what McMo said in the comments is like, I think you're upset that they didn't resonate with your feelings enough, which I probably, that's probably part of it. That's probably part of it. But like, I understand where he's coming from. Like I said that in my stream.
I disagreed with almost everything they said in that conversation, but those guys are friends of mine.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's like, and it's like, what the hell? It's like, I don't see anything in the way they reacted that's like deserves to be held to task as if it was shameful in any way.
But you just said you don't get to tell people whatever. But you're doing that. So who's right?
No, I'm not telling anybody what to think. Like, he can feel however he wants about it. I don't care. You don't get to
Okay.
go. You don't get to complain about other people's reactions to it.
What? Yeah, you do.
Okay, here's the thing. I want to say
Okay.
something. I want to say this.
Whatever.
I want to say this in the stream because here's the thing. This is what I see happening, and this is what I don't want TLC to do because I see it in the comments because this happens in comments, and this is why X has a certain flavor versus long form conversations and podcasts, and where you get to see people's face. Like we've talked about that with mediums before, but like here's what I will say. This is my assertion for self-identified Christians: is you may be angry and not sin. Be angry and do not sin. Anger. So what Jesus is saying is like, you can be angry. You're not allowed to sin. Now, here's the thing. A Christian may say, again, I'm not going to do that. Okay, here's what I think the call is. This is what I'm talking about. This is the adverbial thing, is you can say, okay, disagree with me. That's fine. I am not going to insist on my own way and demand that you do what I want you to do. That is the Christian reply, no matter how right you are, because you can be right and be wrong, or be wrong and be right. And so no matter what anyone says about any of this stuff, if you disagree with it, you can disagree. You may not sin. Disagreeing isn't sinning.
I actually and Nate, I actually in large part agree with you. Part of the video that I put up this morning, I noticed to myself, like just kind of like a manic feeding on the story, and that's like, but that is, I think, the nature of the medium itself. This the attention economy. It's working well. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's grabbing my attention. It's captivating me, and it's moving me around like it always has. And so, like, that's what I want to call out, that level of principality. And it's really hard to not get caught up in the other stuff. So, yeah, that's, I don't even know if I'm speaking on this thing because
No, I mean, I agree with you, Chad. I mean, we're hearing you. I think that is. I talk about this verse in 1 Corinthians, and it's be angry and do not sin. I think the call to anyone who loves God, let's say it that way. I mean, because the corner doesn't need to be overly Christian. The call to anyone who loves God is to not my will, but your will. And Nate, we do need to have, I would love sometime to have the conversation because we need to flesh out. We don't need to have it here. I don't think we really have time. But the gnomic natural will thing, because I don't get it. Like, I want to just agree with Maximus and Jordan and what they're saying because that makes sense to me. But it's just because maybe I'm not seeing the things I'm supposed to be seeing. My main point for this is really though, like, can you, like, I guess to combine like how to disagree and like really disagreeing being divorce and schism, I guess I'm trying to encourage people to be able to superficially disagree but really agree. Have arguments for the sake of heaven.
So I just don't understand how it's an appropriate reaction if you want to on the one hand say that Charlie Kirk was a moderate conservative who believed in engaging his opponents, then why take it to task a couple of like moderately left of center theologians who are clearly also genuinely dedicated Christians for disagreeing with politically and not showing sufficient sorrow from your perspective? Like, I just don't like that. To me, it's like almost a performative contradiction. Like, if you really want to honor Charlie's memory, it seems like your reaction isn't doing that.
Yeah, well, and part of that is like, I mean, I relate to it. Like, I think Nick has talked about this and whether or not he'll come. Like, sorry, Nick, that I'm doing this while you're.
Nate disagrees with Dates Rose, by the way. I don't agree with them politically at all. Like, not at all. Like, I'm a fucking Nazi compared to those guys.
Right. Well, and I'll say this because I said this to Nick in like a private message, but like, but see, they love you. They do this. So like, so there's a question, Nate, because you're friends and because you disagree with them politically, Like Jordan, the way that Jordan was speaking about, okay, let's bring this in. The way that Jordan was speaking about generic mega conservatives, he wouldn't talk about you. And then I would say the difference there is the personalist knowing difference. And so, like, here's the thing: the Dostoevsky quote of like, or Father Stephen Freeman says, "No one ever knows anything in general; they only ever know anything in particular," which is what the incarnation is about. But then also the Dostoevsky quote of like the great philosopher who loves mankind but can't stand to be alone with another person and recoils at their touch, like an actual particular human being. He reviles, but he loves mankind. I think it's really easy and abstract to think that you love people in general and abstractly while you hate them in actuality. And I think that's what often happens with political discourse or religious
Yeah,
discourse.
I
Whether
don't
you
really,
disagree.
I don't really see Jordan cross. I mean, it's not David. David really does cross those lines and says things that are just like beyond the pale about people that he disagrees with politically. I don't ever. I mean, Jordan talks at a level of someone who's politically engaged and has political opinions that are in a particular direction. Does in a respectful way. He also I've seen him engage with conservatives in a very productive way. In conversation. So I know that I know that he's not he's certainly not an ideologue by any stretch of the imagination. And on the particular issue that I have the most radical disagreement with them, I appreciated the fact that they at least granted that the possibility that they didn't think it's a probability, but they at least granted the possibility that they might be wrong in a matter of fact. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
The reason why I pointed to that qualia do thing is because you pointed to the Joachim Phoenix from the interviews back when he did the Joker movie, the original Joker movie. And the reason why I'm pointing to this is because I haven't yet seen the Joker movie, but I heard a lot of reviews and it was disjointed. It was like madness, kind of like didn't make any sense. And the title of itself makes sense now to me in this way. This like we have this we're all kind of engaging in this conspiracy together to engage in this madness, and we can't even admit it. That's the idea of the folly of do. You have one person who is mentally sick or spiritually sick, however you want to say, and usually it does actually the original folly of do diagnosis was rooted in religious delusion. Supposedly, that's how they would say it, and it often had to do with the man and the woman, and they would one person who was mentally ill would encounter the other person who was also mentally ill, and then all of a sudden they would feed each other's mental illness and eventually destroy each other. So it's just I just want to point that out. It's kind of weird to me, and also I don't know what I'm talking about. I should probably get out of here. Have a good day.
all right. See you, buddy. So I think really what's part of what I want to stress, I guess, intellectually, but also very practically, is I think part of integration. So Nate, in that conversation that you had with Jordan and JD, I think part of immigrating and becoming a truly free person and a holy person is integrating your abstract thinking with what you actually do. So like what you say and what you profess becomes who you are. Like when there's not as much separation between those things, because none of us do that perfectly, right?
Right.
You know, like that's the Roman 7 thing.
And this is why we need to be talking to each other, because we can't even, because of as it came out in that conversation, because of the drawbacks of introspection and abstraction, we really need to be in dialogical interaction in order to even be the best version of ourselves, because we're not we're relational beings. That's just the reality of it. And here's the thing, like, here's why the political differences between myself and Jordan and JD don't bother me. Like, beyond the fact that I know them and that we've talked in the past and we have relation on another level. It's that I know that they are speaking what they believe to be true in the best way that they can.
Yeah.
Right? And they might and they see things differently from me. And I also know, because they're both very intelligent people, there are in fact going to be things that they are picking up on that I am not seeing, where my own model of reality might be deficient. And by listening to them, even if I don't agree with them, I might correct my own model.
Right.
By virtue of listening to them, even though they don't agree with me.
Right.
And I would say that they would probably express a similar sentiment in terms of talking to me in areas where they disagree with me.
Right. And that probably gets into the medium piece of where like mediums have strengths and weaknesses and limiting, because like in writing, like old school writing, before the internet, before the telephone, all that stuff, you know, it was relying on so much stuff, and like whatever you can communicate in the written form is, depending on your skill with that form, is so much limited. Because like a lot of times people said, between even in the East and the West and the church, a lot of what happened is like they were speaking different languages and they couldn't communicate and write to each other well, and it took so long that like you weren't really engaging with a person. And then or at least the fullness of the person that you can. And so that happens in writing some. You see that on Twitter, but then at least in Twitter, you can engage and interact. But then here, you can talk to a person back and forth. But then when you know a person more so, you've met them fully embodied in the real life, you've spent more time with them, like you get to, all this stuff gets to be fleshed out more and more, where you are less and less disagreeing about ideas and abstractions. But then what can happen sometimes is you get into the narcissism of minor differences that Freud talked about, like even in your family with your spouse or somebody that you know like as intimately as you can in light of like all the mediums.
Mm-hmm.
And yet in a lot of ways, it's easiest, you can have the most hatred for someone who's that close to you. And so I think in light of all of that, the call is to be Christ-like and Christian in all those different aspects, and to give the benefit of the doubt. You know, it's too easy to, and like I get it. This is what I tell people. For as much as people think I'm like kumbaya and soft-handed and limp-wristed, I was just saying that to my son last night because we were having some conversation about something where I was being like very intense, and I'm like, absolute holiness is the standard. No one gets away with anything. You know, take that from my universalist. But like I believe that, but like I don't think transformation happens with like heavy-handed browbeating. But like even there's maybe a time and a call for that as well. You know, you have to be discerning. This is probably why we just need to have Jess talk about Job all day.
Yeah.
Michael, what up, buddy?
Well, yeah, I definitely think like a big part of the thing we're all wrestling with is just the speed, the immediacy with which we can see things, and then the flood of reactions and all that. Like obviously, I would say anybody that was celebrating, that is a action that should be condemned. Now, it's also a symptom of the fact that people's kind of worldviews have been so flattened that they see, a political allies and political enemies, and it's good guys and bad guys. So I mean, even to say it's like, I'm not even going to say like people that celebrated are evil people. I think they're deceived because that reaction seems to show they have a very flat view of reality. But as for the other thing, like, so one thing I shared, and it's kind of a crazy phenomenon, is that it's like everybody that's a millennial and over, basically, like huge amounts of them have been like, I didn't really know anything about this guy until this happened, and that's myself included. I'd seen like a few little. I just thought he's like a MAGA guy or whatever. Because that's like the clips that we see. And the weird thing is that the algorithm basically told everybody that was like over 35 or something, like, don't be interested in this guy. And we were all not interested. And so the interesting thing to see is that I even think that was like, it was like God doing that, because I don't think that he would have had the same impact on young people if all the old fogies were, really enthusiastic about him. It's even like how Jordan Peterson like got really like he really hit the people our age, and then the younger people are like, whatever, we don't care about that guy. As far as all the like lasting impact and stuff like that, I think, it's different because it's not, because it's a product of this internet age. Like it's just that, people can just become famous for going online and speaking like we all do, but we're not successful enough to draw the attention to really create enemies or anything like that. But like I was really moved because I thought, and I wrote a whole thing about this, like when stuff was going on in the COVID stuff and people were like getting canceled, I saw that like the people were it was the people that were kind of looking for a fight, like people on the right, like you had to be like pushing like a antagonistic, like, I'm gonna oppose the masks and the shots and all that, and it was like only those people that were like really focused on the political stuff that were getting in trouble. And I kind of got to the conclusion like, well, okay, if I focus on the things that are centered in my faith in the gospel, and I say kind of these normal things, that should be safe. But I felt like I needed to do it because I was thinking about this, like, as a father, like, I don't want to be somebody that shrinks back. I want to be speaking openly about the things that I believe, to set an example. And like, then to see him, it's like, wow, well, that's kind of like what he was doing. Like, maybe he was a little bit more politically centered than a lot of the stuff that I necessarily would talk about on a regular basis. It was his job, so obviously that makes sense. But it's like, you would have, for all intents and purposes, thought, okay, if somebody's gonna try to focus on communicating the right way, being reasonable, that they shouldn't be the target of violence. And I think that, it's just, to me, it's almost, I see it in a spiritual sense of like, who's threatened by that good-natured, like, trying to do things the right way, the kind of thing that I've been trying to do. The devil is threatened by that, not political people. Because you could have, because he could have had leftward political stances, but he seems like he was a man of good character and integrity. And if he had had left political stances, it would have been no less a tragedy. And obviously, you can, all the left things, like Tom Holland says, we can all draw those out from Christianity as well. The right and left political thing is a intra-Christian political battle or whatever. But but that's not the way it shook out. But so I mean, but I think, yeah, people like we need to be respectful of the fact that sometimes it takes a while for these things to sink in. Not a lot of people knew a ton of, about it. And people are upset too about like whether or not pastors spoke on it this Sunday. Like my pastor said something at the end of the service. I thought it was really good. But if people, like some people are saying, if your pastor didn't talk about it, you should leave church. It's like, no, start with emailing your pastor and saying, hey, I wish you would have spoken about this, because they're probably like, they might be really out of the loop too, so I don't know. It's just it's a thing that's unfolding, and I think that it is wise to just allow people to process. And there's a good and a bad aspect to the fact that we are all witnessing each other process these things in real time and out in the open.
Yeah, good words, man. Cody, you ready to talk? You able to?
Well, yeah, I think so. Although that's something I'm trying to focus less on is what do I have to say, and what will I say that will what will actually be beneficial. Um, I have a lot of people around me right now who just want to talk, who just want to be heard, and they are engaged with this. This in our culture, we're always connecting to everything that's accessible at all times. And I was in the stream, Rigel's stream, of a few days ago, and one of the thoughts that crossed my mind is that we're, to a degree, I think that we are falling into a trap that we are more omniscient than we actually are. And it's not that we're striving to be omniscient, but we're pretending to be. We can't manage all of this. I think we can have opinions, we can have beliefs, but it's really hard for our opinions and beliefs to just stay what they are. It's really hard for us to communicate. I don't know if we know how to communicate without expressing something that's very close and personal to our heart. But to the beginning of what I was saying, do we say it in a way that's beneficial for anyone, including ourselves? I've been really focusing on that. I've been really concentrated on what it means to say something to someone else who doesn't share all of the thoughts going on in my head, and the next word that comes out of my mouth when they ask me a question about something that's being controversially discussed in many dialogues across their entire week is the next thing I'm going to say going to reinforce an idea of hope, of more fear? Am I doing it in a way that's just contrived because I want to say something that's good? I want to give them something that could possibly be received as something that will produce not optimism, but I think that that's often what happens is when we speak, whether we're speaking about God, whether we're just trying to be charitable. Sometimes I think we're just sharing optimism, and or if not optimism, we try to give them the realism, and the realism will make them sober to the things that we believe, because we've already had a dose of realism and probably cynicism around these particular times where these particular tragedies are taking place. So I read a lot of comments. People are firing from the hip, and it's easier to fire from the hip when we feel like we've been doused with cold water too many times. We're trying to shake people awake, but what is it doing? Is it establishing the hope of the gospel into people's hearts, or is there really a space in which we should be taking a step back? Like Michael said, the speed in which we're trying to process everything has become the norm. And if you can't process it fast enough, if you can't speak to it quick enough, then you're living under a rock, or you don't have anything meaningful to say. And I'm starting to peel back this this in myself, is maybe the best thing to say is really nothing. Maybe the best thing to say is, I understand where you're coming from. I hear you. To the other person you're having a conversation with, and look for the spots that you can actually give them something true, something hopeful in the midst of all of the the manic behavior that they're going through with trying to process all, because that's what everybody else is doing around them. How can we, as specifically Christians, do a service to someone, a service towards someone, without trying to project more optimism or give them a cold dose of cynicism to wake them up? Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. I think that's a good word. I think especially the idea that, like, the impulse to say something so quickly, I think it's like, why? I think it's good to think about, like, why is that the impulse? Why? What's the motivating thing of, like, I need to say something? And I think also the point that the pride connected with, if you're really angry about something, it's I would say it's betraying the fact that you think you see the world objectively. You think you have the monarchical vision. You think you see truth perfectly, which then, if like I was saying before, freedom is connected to holiness. If you really think you see objectively, you think you're perfect. You think you're holy. And I mean, you might want to check yourself, pride comes before the fall. Humility. If people aren't
Well,
speaking in humility, that's dangerous. And that doesn't mean that you're not passionate and that you can't say anything and that you can't have opinions, but check yourself,
I know I pissed some people off in this stream when I came in, but I had said literally nothing about this entire thing the whole time. And if you go and check TLC Twitter, you'll see that lots of people not only reacted and felt the need to say something in real time, but decided that they were going to tell everybody else how to think about it too.
Right.
So.
No, I agree. And Nick, I agree with this too. Listen, I told you, I didn't agree with a lot of stuff that they have to say. But listen, that's the thing too. But this is kind of my shtick. If I talk to anybody about religion or religion, people in the TLC are used to me enough. But like politics, I will piss off absolutely everyone. Like, I will make everybody mad if I talk to them about politics. So, okay, Mark.
I'm guaranteed to piss any room of people off about politics.
Yeah, that's because we're anarchists. People don't like it because we just pick a side. Mark, what's up, buddy?
Yeah,
you ready to talk?
No, I think Nate's feelings are very American, and I think it was good to hear, refreshing. I also understand what you're talking about, the news, and if to the degree that you can listen to it or read it and not be manipulated by the producers and editors of the news, there's still information to be gleaned because there are people actively trying to leverage this moment to gain power and to gain power for nefarious ends. And if you don't pay attention to that, you'll be caught off guard or may find yourself supporting people you would rather not support. So there's that. And one last thought was the canonization of Charlie Kirk as a martyr. I've heard that a lot, heard that recently, even in the corner. That's fine if that's how you feel. What about the Melissa and Mark Hortman, who were murdered in a political act of violence in your own state, Luke, Minnesota? Just 2 months ago? Was it even that long?
My sense of time is bad. I mean, something close to that. Yeah.
Are they martyrs? And it may be valuable. The martyr language could be valuable, but not in the way that people imagine. They're not martyred for a cause. It seems like they're martyred. All of these people are being martyred for an idea that is in its death throes.
Are
That
they
is,
are they martyrs or are they sacrifices?
well, yeah, that you could look at it. Yeah, that's probably a more accurate way of looking at it. But they're being thrown away. Their lives are being thrown away. There's this great line about, what was it? It was like an epitaph for the president of the Confederacy, and it was, I think he said something like, what was it? The died for an idea. The presidents of Jefferson Davis said this. I'm sorry, I butchered the whole thing. Jefferson Davis spoke of the end of the Confederacy, and as it was closing in on him, and he said the epitaph should read, "Died of an idea," because they couldn't let practical reality direct their actions. They clung to a set of ideals that they held sacred and were willing to throw their whole world away for an idea. And it happened to not be a very good idea, but that's what they did. And it seems like we're kind of in this moment where we're, what Charlie's words were his last words were something about, it was a rhetorical argument around gun violence, which is a horrible, horrible irony. But martyrs, sacrifices. This is stuff to pay attention to. I have no idea where everything's going, but I like where this stream is going. I like the give and take of your ideas and how you're doing it.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks for your words. Scott, you ready?
Yeah, I kind of jumped on because my experience was almost the antithesis to what Cody was speaking to about trying to resist against wanting to speak, where I recoiled. It was pretty because I was at work. Somebody had it on the TV, and I saw it, and the visceral feeling that I received in that moment, and at that time he had just been shot. He hadn't been killed yet. He hadn't died yet.
Yeah.
That happened a little bit later, but my initial thought was just to bury it deep. For one, I was at work. I had things to do, people depending on me. I got to do the thing. But I made a comment earlier about the emotions and how much that drives us, and especially in a situation like this where politics in particular have been so emotionally charged for the better part of the last 2 decades, that I have found that in my struggles to not let emotions dictate my actions, that the emotions find a way out anyway. Like they just find a way to bubble out. And that actually happened to me just that same day. And, I pushed it down. I was doing my stuff. I was focused on doing the tasks that I needed to get done. But by the end of the day, I ended up rightfully confronting a wrong, but did it in a way that was not loving, right? It just came out. And like I said, I feel that I was, and maybe I'm being overly judgmental to myself, but the critique I got was that my tone was improper in my addressing. So I hope this can glean a little bit in the disagreement that you were touching to, that we don't always know what's going on in the hearts of others, what they're putting at the highest level at that moment to move forward. But I also would say that trying to bury it deep and not talking about it doesn't always serve the right outcome either. I don't know. I'm still dealing with because to be honest with you, the feeling that I felt brought me back to 9/11. This guy, I didn't like his TikToks, but he was speaking his version of Christianity. And the way I see it is he got killed for doing that in a country that's supposed to be based on, number one, freedom of religion, number two, freedom to talk about it.
Yeah.
That cuts at the heart of what we're supposed to be putting at the top of our coalescence as a country, this experiment. And it really shook me. I had goosebumps when I saw it, and I'm getting them now, rethinking about how to the core this thing was in my mind and in my heart. Yeah, so I know you're trying to get off here in 10 minutes, but I just wanted to kind of give the other side of that coin to what Cody was saying, because as I understand it in my struggles through life, especially with anger, patience is supposed to be a thing that can prevent me from doing that, but also going too far, right, and being patient and trying to find all the things also prevents maybe everybody from getting a piece of the other side of the coin, so we can find a balanced approach.
Right. No, I think that's all a really good point. I think that the thing I'm trying to point to, and I agree with you, I think you have to be internally integrated enough to discern what's going on in you and what you need to do in the moment, because you can repress your emotion, thinking that you're following some abstract ideology of I shouldn't talk now, which again, even that thought is an abstraction, and not be really discerning what's going on in yourself and what you should be doing. And then it comes out sideways, and then you have a wrong tone with someone else. Like that kind of stuff happens all the time. So I agree with you. I think it's the be angry and do not sin. I guess what I'm trying to advocate to Christians is when you are angry, when a passion emerges, which is just an emotion, but that's just part of being a biological human being with a physical material body, like that's fine. In that sense, it's natural. But then what you do with that, how you exercise your will in relation to that emotion matters. And Jesus gave us commandments about that. And I would say your job is to obey. Christian, what up, buddy?
I don't know, but I'm here.
Nice. Good.
I would just say the only thing I would say, Scott, I love everything you said. The only thing I would push back on at all is I think the one thing we definitely don't know is we actually do not have any idea what Charlie was killed for yet, and we won't know until the trial is over.
I agree. People really want to jump quickly to that.
Yeah, and people jumping to conclusions about that is one of the biggest problems with the whole thing.
If I may, that was just my feelings initially. Like I said, I tried to push them down right away because, like I said, I had things to do. But those were the initial thoughts I had.
Yeah.
Right. Also,
and then jumping to conclusions. I'm sorry, just jumping to conclusions. What's the motivation behind those who are jumping? Right. That's back to your manipulation thing, Luke.
Right. And I mean, it's so easy. And I know as myself, like I'm somebody I'm not very slow to speak. Like that's been a verse in the Bible that's always been convicting for me because I'm not slow to speak. And so when I am being slow to speak and make judgments, it's been decades of trying to obey God. Like if I'm doing that, that's what I'm doing. And also, Jed, it's funny because like, yeah, I agree with you somewhat, but then Peter Thiel reads Gerard. So like, what are we going to do? You know?
My question on jumping to conclusions related to like the institutions of, like our courts and our, like, I think a part of all of this is points to our lack of faith in the institutions that are trying to hold us together. And that comes from having intuitions of things that you think might be true and being told that's not true. And then those things actually being true. And so, we should just wait for those institutions to tell us quote unquote the truth. I think that that's a part of all of this. And and to deny like your intuitions as just a person, not saying that they're correct, but that they are formed, in how we shape and understand reality. And I think so, I would say that in some ways, like sense making faculties, even like what we're doing right now or around this corner of the internet, are a result of that lack of trust within the larger institutions. And whether or not that's something to be celebrated or not, I don't think it is. But I think that that's a reality that we are kind of past some of that.
Yeah, no, I very much agree. Like whether or not, I don't know. And I stand by the tweet that I made about, I think institutions are based in the written word and like there's strengths and weaknesses to it. And there is institutional collapse for a reason, and whether or not that's a good or bad thing, it just is. Like if you think people trust institutions and we just need to go back to trusting institutions, I think you are backwards thinking and it's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that there are not good things there and we can't just like move away completely from it. Okay, Alan came in. We got to listen to Alan and then we're going to do final words. Alan, you got to be ready. You got to be locked and loaded. You got to be.
Sorry.
Are you ready?
I take Central.
You take Central. You just came in, so you get to talk. Okay, everyone has to. Oh, Alan. Okay, and Chad's back, and then we're gonna do final words. What up, Chad?
Final words? I'll start with the final words. My final word is something that Brett Weinstein said back during the George Floyd event. He said the problem is like with all of the heightened news cycles and all the stories, talk. What can happen is it may actually pollute the fair trial aspect of the judicial process. Like, where is this guy going to get actually a fair hearing? I guess it's dangerous because like if he if he's guilty and whatever of all this stuff and well I guess it's what happens downstream. So it's not just the now effects. I guess it's the so that's what I'm kind of thinking about. And I was just reminded of that today, thinking about the George Floyd stuff and the Derek Chauvin. Did Derek? I don't know. So that's my final thoughts.
Okay. Thanks, buddy. Let's go.
Yep.
Nate, Michael, Cody, Mark, Scott, Christian. Can we do it in that order? Since Christian, you came in later. Alan is trying to come again, but is it going to work? Alan, first and last word.
The only thing I wanted to add here is just I think that one of the moments, the values of the moment like this is realizing how little control we have. Because even if we say like, oh well, you shouldn't say that or you shouldn't respond that way, like you can't even stop the responses. I mean, you can't stop any of it. You can't stop the shooter. You can't stop people's responses to it. And so like the culling back and being like, this is the position I'm actually in. Like, I think so often human beings will be like, you know, oh, you get a new boss and you don't like your new boss and you're mad about it. And then you're like, well, I'm going to get him fired or move to a different department. And then you're like, well, I actually can't do any of that. And my boss, boss's boss has told me that they're just the new boss. Then people just are like, okay, I'll learn how to deal with this and I'll change my perspective. But that perspective shift only comes after you realize, oh, I have no power to change the situation. So it's like actually addressing where you are and what you have power over and control over is humbling, because it sucks to wake up one day and be like, I can't stop the thing. I can't stop the reaction to the thing. I can't even stop the reaction to the reaction to the thing. So it's like, where are you actually standing from? Who are you to tell people like, this is on sides and this is off of sides and like this was right and this was wrong? It's like, you know, there's some level we can do that with our communication and what we're doing here. But there's a whole nother level at which, like, yeah, I can't stop any of it. The stuff I like, I can't stop. The stuff I don't like, I can't stop.
Word. Good one. Who did I say was next?
Me.
Okay.
You said me.
Okay.
So actually, I wanted to point to something Skank said, because there's I don't know how he intended it, but I'm going to bounce off of it.
Sorry. Go
He
ahead.
said, knowing what the killer thought they were doing will also not tell us what Charlie's murder means. And yes, the reason I had a voice of caution about jumping to conclusions about what motivated it, because that is destructive. But we can never know what murder means ever, because evil is incoherent by its nature. And so it means nothing, and it never will mean anything. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I'll kind of jump off that, because I had been contemplating for a long time, the history of like heretical thoughts and movements, and some of them, you could say very clearly why the ideas are wrong. But as soon as the orthodoxy or whatever decides to silence the heretics with killing, they condemn themselves, and that's always the case. And sometimes it's that abstraction where somebody who on paper we might think is wrong for all legitimate reasons gives up their life, but other times it's somebody who has more integrity and coherence, whose life is lost. I think maybe that's why this is hitting people in a different way, because just because of him being a father and a young man, and all those things that are clearly good things to be, but when you use when you use violence, you lose the argument.
Yeah, I think it's a good word. All right. Do we say Cody next? Cody Mark Scott? Yep.
Yeah.
And Christian.
Okay. I don't know. This is just for me. But anybody else who finds it valuable, that's great. What I was speaking to before is, perhaps there's a place in these times, in the things that we're discussing, in the moments where we see something that we can't process within just a few hours or a few days. We need real time. We need real space. We need real silence. Maybe it's worth being more apathetic in ourselves. That what are we not? Well, I'm not omniscient. I'm not emotionally stable in the midst of witnessing something that is absolutely antithetical to life and thriving. And I am not able to heal everyone's thoughts and everyone's minds with my optimism and or my cold dose of cynicism to try to shake them awake. But what I am is I'm human. I'm helpless. I'm dependent. I need community. I need others to be around me, and perhaps I just need to be present with others, not saying much other than having pastoral care and compassion for their heart versus trying to modify or manage their opinions where they are, because they're going to change and mine are going to change. So I want to stand with people in the midst of where all of us are transforming and being transfigured in theosis.
Great word, Mark.
All good stuff. Store up for yourselves treasure in heaven. Do not, if events are if you allow events to change your core self and how you act in the world, you aren't in a stable place. So care to yourself.
Yeah, that makes me think of, I think about this a lot, but Chris Green's talked about self-control being the it's the peak of Christian virtue. And it's a good thing to keep in mind. I agree with him. All right, Scott.
Amen.
Real quickly, be slow to anger. That's my convicting. Number 2, thanks, Chad. The George Floyd thing, that was another visceral moment for me as well. So I appreciate that getting put back into the context of my thinking about it. As I endeavor to take more fully on the life of Christ as the model, I allow the fear that something like what happened to Charlie can happen to me. And the people I love will have to bear the weight of my decision to fully embrace the example that has been set before me in the way that I see it. So I think that's probably the reason for it being so touching, the situation. And in that light, I don't want to make things worse by my behaviors and acting out poorly. So I appreciate you guys having this this forum, and this is the first time I've actually talked about it, really. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. Christian, TLC journalist, close us out, my friend.
I don't know if I would ever say that murder is meaningless, but I would say maybe sometimes it feels senseless. And because Christ was murdered, and that is like the infinite meaning of so many people's reality.
Christ laid down his life; he wasn't murdered.
Well,
Christ's death has meaning specifically because it's not a murder.
But you know what Christian's getting at.
But what about martyrs or people that do like that is full of meaning, and they're all killed and they're all murdered? So there's a paradox there. I'll agree with you. But then the second piece, with that, if events change you, then you're not stable. I don't agree with that either, because that makes you a sociopath. Like, things have to affect you, and they affect and to deny a massive amount of people's genuine emotional realities to something that was absolutely tragic in the public eye, regardless of anything that he did. The sheer image of the icon of a guy's neck exploding is going to likely change your perceptions of reality if that wasn't. And it's also related to, it doesn't even have to be related to a Charlie Kirk's political or religious beliefs on anything. It can just be like the entire image of it. It's a human response to.
Are you a man of peace? Basic question. Are you a man of peace?
That's the question too.
Who are you speaking to, Mark?
Christian.
Oh.
He says if events don't change you, then you're a sociopath. I'm saying, are you a man of peace?
Not whenever I was cheating on my wife.
Well, then, were you in Christ, or was Christ in you?
That's a great question.
If
So
Christ abides in you, your circumstances will not change who you are at your core. That is not being a sociopath, my friend.
no,
That is
I
being
agree.
God in the world.
Well, then let's not
No,
at the
I
very end.
have a
Let's
lot.
at the very
What
very end
Christian
here.
had a
Let's
lot.
not.
I don't. Christian had a lot of heart and a lot of soul, and I don't want to criticize him in any way. I feel you, brother. What you said was totally fine, and I take no truck with it. My issue was with other people telling me how to react. I don't have any issue with other people can feel how they feel, and they're entitled to their feelings. But please don't tell me how I'm supposed to react.
Right.
Well, and I think Christian will, and then we'll get back and not interrupt Christian, let him finish it out. But I think to your point, like you're saying, events change you in that you're not stoically cold to what's happening in the world, I think is what you're getting at, rather than like sociopath. Like you need to be in touch with the world, engage with the world,
Yeah,
co-suffering with the world.
And I think that it is not, it's not crazy to look at this political religio event very similar to George Floyd. It's just not crazy to see the parallels to those things. And I think that you look and it does affect people and does change people. And if people had empathetic responses to that, that's not crazy. And if people have empathetic responses to this, it's not crazy. And it doesn't mean you're unstable either. And so, you know, that's just all I'm saying related to that. Yes, we should have a peace that transcends all understanding in Christ, but I mean, I haven't always had that. Even in my claims of Christ, even when I was a minister, and even since, there's times that I don't have peace. And I don't think that the fruits of the Spirit endure like in the kinds of ways that we would wish and hope that they always do, because that is Christ. I mean, that was Christ. And I break the fruits of the Spirit all the time. I've sinned in my anger all the time. And hopefully it's less. Hopefully it's not as severe. Hopefully there is sanctification and theosis in my life, but it's not an either or. Like if you don't have peace at a moment, then you're an unstable human necessarily either. But I can definitely tell you what made peace in my life was confessing the truth. And what made peace in my life was like basically the image of a cross. And like something had to die. And it was like the most emotional thing. It was the most true thing. It was the most deep thing in my life. And so, you know, the parallels of that people are experiencing regardless. Like I don't look across, you know, there was a young man named Henry who made he went to a Charlie Kirk vigil this week, and he took video, and he interviewed people that didn't agree, interviewed people protesting, and it was a very brave and courageous thing that he did. And people have all sorts of responses, but to like invalidate anybody that's having emotional responses to this is like not something that I will agree with. But I guess that'll be my last word.
Let's agree. Let's close it by disagreeing in love. Look at that. How wonderful.
I don't know if there's a lot to disagree about. That's not even what it's about. Like, I would just say this to Christian. I agree with the element. First of all, I agree with everything that Christian said. The only thing I would say is that I would challenge whether the cross has any meaning apart from the resurrection. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I think it has. Yes, it has to have meaning. The ultimate meaning comes from that, but we relate to Christ and his suffering, and that's a meaning for me on the cross that I will take.
But I think the meaning in the resurrection, to bring it back to the beginning, and then this is the final word with Jordan, is that it's your belief in the resurrection will be your experience of it phenomenologically, not abstractly.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate it. And till next time. All right. That's it. Bye.